If you've been wondering about the Idoing Android head unit, I set out to make the most comprehensive video series on it so that hopefully, if you decide to buy one of these head units, you will be set up for success from the get-go. This is part 1, and I'm going to walk you through the entire installation process and share tons of tips so that you fully understand what you're doing. In part 2, I go over all of the head unit's features. The Idoing Android head unit is a fully featured direct replacement to the quite substandard stock stereo that these cars come with. This is a 2020 STI, but within the Subaru family, you'll find that most of this applies to the WRX, the Forester, Outback, Crosstrek, BRZ, Impreza, etc. So if you decide to get one, you just have to make sure that it's made specifically for your year, make, and model, and the particular stock stereo that your car came with. The first thing you will notice is that it comes with a lot of connectors. Depending on what model car you have, you may or may not have every cable you see right here, as the radios are more or less tailored to the specific model. Once you have everything laid out on the table and everything looks good, it's time to remove the factory head unit so that we can get going. Because I do this so much, I made a separate removal video of the head unit, which I will link up above and in the video description. The only thing I advise at this point is to ensure that you disconnect the negative battery terminal before starting the head unit installation process. Okay, so what I have here, of course, is the stock head unit on the left, and I have the Idoing Android head unit on the right. And as you can imagine, we have to take the buttons in the middle, the vents, and the temperature controls and transfer them over to the Idoing head unit. In this particular stock head unit, I also have the telematics unit, which is this black box down here. If you don't have that in your car, consider yourself lucky, because then you don't have to deal with it. But if you do have the telematics unit, you do have to deal with it. And the reason being is because the front speaker output from the head unit goes through the telematics unit and out the telematics unit to the speakers. That means that if you omit the telematics unit, then you're not going to have any front speaker output. You're just not going to hear anything from the front speakers. The telematics unit is responsible for all of the remote services like Starlink, remotely starting the car, or GPS tracking of the car, that kind of thing. Thankfully, because the Idoing head unit is only singled in size, there's plenty of room there. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out the telematics unit and I'm gonna use 3M tape and just 3M tape it to the bottom part right here of the Idoing Android head unit. And that's it. Then everything is gonna be right there, pretty much in the same spot that the stock head unit has it. For the temperature control down here is 4 screws. So use a Phillips screwdriver and just take out all 4 of those screws, and then that thing is gonna come right out. We'll get to it in a second. And let's take out that telematics unit. It's 4 screws on the side. So again, just take those 4 screws out with a Phillips screwdriver. Okay, so now we have to remove each individual vent, and you're gonna notice that the vent actually has 2 clips on each side. One up here, one right there, and then underneath, one there and one there. So you're gonna take a small screwdriver like this, and you're gonna pop out the vents from the clips. So all you gotta do is stick your screwdriver like that and just kind of pop it out while you're pulling on this side that way. So just pop that out a little bit. It might pop back in, but see how that one stayed? Then you can do the same thing for the other one. Boom. So I already did that side. So once you do that side, the other side is a little bit more difficult, but you can definitely do it. You can see the clip right there. Do the same thing. Pop your screwdriver underneath. Once that one's already popped out a little bit, then you can move on to the other one before you kind of force it. And right there, I think I have them both out now. This one clicked back. Okay. Oop. I don't want to force that. Break it. There we go. Perfect. And of course, we also have these 2 buttons to remove. These are pretty easy. You can see the little clips right there. All you have to do is pinch them and push it through. There's one. And this one, you just kind of push through. Comes right out. Okay, so there's always the case whenever you have aftermarket parts that things may not line up perfectly. This is a perfect example right here. If you see, these are the clips where those vents go, but notice on the left, it's much thinner than the one on the right. So the left one fits fine, but the right one doesn't quite go through. It might if I force it, but I don't want to force it. These are not made of metal. This will break. So I don't want it to break because I don't want to have a loose vent up there. So what I did was I took a razor like this. Well, this is the razor I used. I literally shaved a very small layer right off the top on that side. And I'm about to do the same thing on this side. And all that's doing is just making it just slightly thinner so that that piece actually fits through right without you having to force it. Okay, so the only thing I have left to do is to secure the telematics unit. It's gonna go just like this, but I'm not gonna secure it yet because I wanna show you all of the cables first. And then once I show you all the cables, then I'll do this before I put it in the car. Okay, so now it's time to demystify all of these cables. You're gonna have a lot of connectors, and as an Android head unit that's adaptable and used in many different vehicles and models, then you're gonna have some cables and connectors that you're just not gonna need, or that are your choice whether you want to use them or not. First thing I gotta say is that the Android head unit is basically a phone, and as such you actually have the option of installing a SIM card to the Android head unit in order to feed the head unit its own internet signal. If you look right here, we'll go with this one first. This one right here is a little connector that actually will house a SIM card right in there. Then you would plug it in right here, that spot right there. You would put in your SIM card in there. So you'd have to obviously get a 4G SIM card from a network provider, and you'd have to pay for the service or whatnot. But once you do that, you will have internet straight into the head unit. And then of course you're gonna need an antenna for that. Is this antenna right here. This is the 4G antenna. So this is the same as the internal antenna that's inside your phone that allows your phone to get service from the tower. Well, that's what this antenna right here does. And it has two connectors, and the connectors will get plugged in right here in these two spots right here. And if you decide to use this antenna is gonna get installed inside one of the pillars. So you would literally put it inside the pillar, then you would run the wires, you know, down the pillar, behind the firewall, and up into the head unit right here, right? If you decide to use this, which is entirely your choice, because you don't have to, you can actually, if you want to use the internet functionality, and the internet functionality is going to allow you to go to websites, it's going to allow you to watch YouTube, anything that you can do on your phone, you're going to be able to do on the head unit. If you want to have that functionality, you could do a Wi-Fi hotspot from your phone, and you don't need to do this, which is what I'm going to do. I don't need to do this. I don't want another expense. So I'm not going to use this at all. But if you do decide to use this, wherever you install this, make sure that you install the GPS antenna on the opposite side so they don't interfere with each other. And speaking about the GPS antenna obviously is for GPS. It has to be on the dash, somewhere in front underneath the windshield, where it has view of the sky in order for it to work properly. This gets plugged in right there. And this is gonna augment the GPS signal of the head unit in case your phone's GPS signal is weak, or to give the head unit its own GPS capability. Next thing you got to talk about is your microphone. If you're using voice assistant or you're making Bluetooth calls and whatnot, this is going to be the microphone that's going to pick up your voice, and it's going to work with the head unit. Obviously, it has to have line of sight of your voice in order to work properly. I'm going to show you exactly where the best spot to connect this is on the car. This is a two-step process for this, two harnesses. You have this harness right here where you would actually plug it in because there's no spot to plug the microphone in on the head unit. And then this right here is going to get plugged in right there. These two wires right here don't need to be installed to anything. They have functionality that's already built into this portion of the stereo, so they don't need to be plugged in. So we're gonna leave that there. The next step is gonna be the FM antenna. You put it in there, and then you're gonna notice that there's an auto antenna wire right here that provides 12 volts to an automatic antenna. Now, our cars, at least my car, my model, my specific model, does not have an antenna that requires power. I verified that on the harness on the car. If you look at the antenna harness in the car, it's gonna look like this, right? If it has that pin right there, right up there, if it has that pin coming out from it on the car, then it requires the 12 volts. This car does not, so I don't need to plug this in because it's not going to anything at all. It's just a wire that's not going to anything. But if your particular model, because I don't know all the models, has that pin on the wire on the car, then you need to plug this in. So where does that go? This yellow harness has an auto antenna or wire that comes right out, and that provides it the 12 volts that it needs. So you would just connect them together just like this, cover them up, and you're good to go, okay? And then this would get connected right there, just like that. Now, I'm gonna unplug it for a second so I can show you the rest of the wires on here. Like I said, these stereos are used across many different models. So all of these wires right here, most of them are not even gonna be used at all because the head unit is already getting these signals from the harnesses that you're plugging in. You're gonna plug these harnesses right here, and it's already getting, you know, a reverse signal from 28 pin connector, a battery plus that's already getting it from there, accessories, getting all these signals already, so you don't have to plug any of those in. There is a camera in RCA, so if you want to add your own camera to it, just another maybe front-facing camera or a camera elsewhere, you can plug it into here and then view the camera through the menus on the head unit. There's also another wire here that's useful, which is the amp control wire. This is going to provide a 12-volt signal whenever the head unit is on to power amplifiers, not to power the amplifier, but to provide the turn-on signal telling it that the head unit is on so that your amplifiers are not running all the time. So the remote input into your amplifiers is going to go to this right here. So for that reason, I am going to use this cable because I am going to install a couple amplifiers, but only for that. That's the only wire out of this harness that I need. The next wire is going to be this one right here. These are going to be your preamp outputs. If you don't know what a preamp output is, that is a pre-amplified signal. The music that's coming out of your head unit that's going out to the speakers also comes out through here, but it comes out not amplified yet. So it's like a 4 or 5 volt signal that's meant to go into an amplifier. So you don't have to use the already amplified signal that's coming out of the head unit. The amplifiers work much better with a pre-amplified signal so that they only do the amplification, and you don't have a signal that's amplified both by the head unit and then re-amplified by the amplifier. So that's what these are for. You have one for the subwoofer, for the front, for the rear. You also have auxiliary in and video in. So you can connect a video audio source through here too if you want to. So if you don't want to connect a video audio source and you're not installing any amplifiers, then you don't need this harness at all. I'm going to use it because I'm going to be using amplifiers, so I'm going to plug it in. Next, we're going to go to the USB cables. You have 2 USB cables. There's a single and a double. And I verified with Idoing because I was curious as to why there were so many. And they clarified that this one right here is the one that's preferred and should be used for Android Auto or CarPlay. So if you plug in your phone to it to use that functionality, this is the cable that you're going to want to plug it into. And these are just more ports that you can use for USB thumb drives and whatnot. They said that this one is more reliable. So I'll be testing both. I'll put them both. I'll install them both. And I will connect this one to the dash. And this is the one that I'm going to use for Android Auto. And I'll run these to the glove box. So this one right here will go up here. And then this one will go right there. And of course, those are going to be ran in the car. And finally, we have one more, and depending on which model vehicle you have and which stereo you have installed in that particular vehicle, your camera output or input is going to come out either from this connector right here or from the 28-pin connector right here. Okay, so if you have this connector, then the output is going to come out of that. So that's what this particular connector is for. You're going to take the connector that would have gone in there, and instead of plugging in there, obviously you're going to plug it in here, and then this is going to get plugged in to the Idoing head unit. Now, there are a couple of spots where this can actually be plugged into, so you can mess this up. So it doesn't go here, and it actually fits right there. You don't want to put it there, or you're not going to have reverse camera. Okay, it goes up here. That's a very easy mistake to make, but that's where it goes. So make sure that the camera input goes up here, because this right here is specific to the vehicle. So your camera is gonna go right there, and then that's gonna get plugged into here. And I don't have use for these two. I don't know if somebody with a different model car might have a connections that fit there, but I don't, and I verified with Idoing that they don't go to anything, at least not in my car. So that's gonna go away. If you don't have your camera coming out of there, then obviously, you don't have to worry about it, because the 28-pin connection goes right here, this part right here, so it's gonna get its signal and your camera's gonna work. But if you don't, then you need to have this cable plugged in. One of the most beautiful things about this head unit is the fact that you don't need any harnesses. The Idoing Android head unit is gonna make use of 4 main connections, right? You're gonna have your 28-pin right here. You're gonna have your 10-pin, the main 10-pin right there. You're gonna have your 6-pin right there, and then of course your rear backup camera, which I'm going to go over in a second. These two right here, the 10 and 6, are the 2 connectors that have most of the signals that the head unit needs to work. This has all the speaker connections, this has power, accessory, all those basic signals that any head unit needs are housed in these 2 connections right here. And then the 28-pin right here has other signals like parking, reverse, things of that nature. So the Idoing head unit is literally taking these 3 connectors right here, and it knows exactly what each pin goes to, and it's making use of that so that you don't have to figure it out and you don't have to get harnesses. So if you have one of the cars that have the 5-pin connection right here, this is your backup camera. So you're either gonna have this connection right here. If you do, then that's where the backup camera comes out of. If you don't, then it's gonna come out of right here. You're not gonna have to worry about this right here. Of course, this is the cable right from the Android head unit, and these 2 connectors right here are not gonna get used. So I'm gonna take those to the side, and I'm gonna tape them and wrap them in foam so they don't rattle, and put them to the side. So those are the main connections that your head unit is going to need. There's going to be other wires that you're just not going to need, that you're not going to plug in. Like for example, the ground wire right here, not going to need it. This wire right here, I don't even know what it goes to, but not going to need it. There's no place to connect it. Any wire that you're not going to connect, wrap it in foam, or at the very least, either zip tie it out of the way or tape it with electrical tape so that it doesn't develop a rattle back there. So I've already pre-staged all of the wires. So the first thing you should do is definitely pre-stage all of the wires that you're going to need, that you're going to be using. So for example, right here, I have the single USB. So that's already ran to where I want it to be. This right here is the double USB. That's already ran to the glove box. So it's right here waiting for the head unit. This right here is the GPS antenna. That's already ran to the dash. This is where I chose to put my GPS antenna, right next to the tweeter and under the windshield. The cable is routed behind that foam and then it's zip tied right there on the pillar and routed down. It comes out right there where it could easily be routed and zip tied with the rest of those cables to the back of the head unit. Right here is the microphone, and that's already ran to its spot and it's sitting here ready for the head unit. So this is where I like to place my microphones, since it's right in front of the driver and it's very easy to route to the back of the head unit from there, since underneath there is a very convenient access hole. I've never had issues with this, but Idoing recommends placing on the A-pillar. Okay, last thing I want to mention is these gray connectors right here. That's for your telematics unit. So if you don't have a telematics unit, then you're not going to have these connections down there and you don't have to worry about it. But there's plenty of room to reinstall the telematics unit, so it's really not that big of a deal. I'm reinstalling it. Everything else is getting wrapped in foam and zip tied out of the way, like back there, so that it's not taking up room and I can easily just push the head unit back there. You don't want to have to force the head unit when you're installing it. So the more room you have, the better. So we're down to the home stretch. At this point, it's just a matter of plugging every connector in. No sense in rushing this. We don't want to finish only to discover we missed a connector. Take your time and make sure every connector is accounted for and that every connector is pushed in all the way. When it comes time to push the head unit into place, remember there are clips on the top and on the bottom, so make sure those are aligned properly. If you did some basic cable management, this shouldn't give you much trouble. Just remember this bezel is fragile, so don't force it. If it gives you too much resistance, something is not right, simply reassess and start over. So far, I'm thoroughly impressed. The installation literally could not have been more straightforward. I'm glad I decided to finally give one of these a try. The only thing I can't speak of yet is how reliable it's going to be long-term, since I just got it, but I will share my experiences as time goes on. Even though the head unit doesn't come with installation instructions, I do want to say thank you to Idoing for being responsive when I had a few questions of them. This head unit has a ton of features, so don't forget to check out part 2 for a walkthrough of all of its features. Even though I tried to anticipate questions, if you still have one lingering, put it in the comments section or just let me know what you think. Do you want one of these head units? If you already own one, let me know what your experience has been so far. Don't forget to like and share the video if you found it useful. And if you're not yet subscribed, I invite you to do so. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video. Take care.